Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Electric Car Hangout and another busy week of EV news and road trips, all sorts of stuff we're going to talk about today. But really wanted to start out by talking about Tesla's impact report. Came out a couple weeks ago and seemed to kind of fly under the radar, and then with some interesting developments today. Very interesting that would come out, and then today it was announced that the S&P 500, ESG ratings dropped Tesla out because they didn't think they were doing enough for the environment and some other factors. But interesting that I wanted to talk about the impact report today. And then that happens today. Elon was pretty feisty. It sounds like on Twitter. I didn't see everything. Talking about what a joke it is that like the Exxons of the world have this great rating, and a complete EV maker that also sells solar and battery storage, all that stuff, doesn't have as good of a environmental score. So pretty interesting there. Rob Maurer from Tesla Daily did a brief but very thorough examination of the absurdity of that. So I won't go too into it, but it will kind of be a background theme through the night. Hi, Todd. Welcome. Hope everything's working right. I had some, as usual, a new technical issue every week, and my internet was being finicky earlier today, so hopefully this all stays up. But anyway, welcome. Todd is, hey John, welcome. Todd is going to be joining me on the trip to South Dakota starting tomorrow morning. So this is going to be hopefully a little shorter episode where we'll talk about some of the stuff from the impact report and just some other kind of general news, some road trip stuff. And then I need to actually pack the car, pack clothes, pack camera gear, all that kind of stuff for the trip. I need to leave right as soon as I get my daughter on the bus in the morning. Going to have to jump right in the car and hit the road. And I thought I was going to be like ahead of everybody, and then I actually looked at how far it is to our meeting spot, and I'm going to be bringing up the tail end. So hopefully the bus comes early tomorrow. You never know. It seems like it gets later and later throughout the year. They get more relaxed about it. So we'll see. But we'll be charged up to 100% when I leave home. Have plenty of range. So, yeah, that's about 11 hours from now. And I'd like to get some sleep because we are driving from Minnesota to Custer, South Dakota. So that's crossing most of Minnesota from the east to the west, and then almost the entire state of South Dakota. So should be fun. We've got a convoy of Minnesota folks that are going over. Some people are leaving at different times, but I think Todd's going to be in that convoy. I'll be in that convoy and a handful of other people. So, like I said, should be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. But, it's kind of that panic before a trip of, oh, I haven't done this, and this. Today was my brother's birthday, and so we had to make a trip over there, and which was fun. Good time, good stuff to do. But as the time ticks closer, you end up like seeing all that stuff and like, oh man, I'm gonna be pushing it. So hopefully not too long of a night tonight, although if I keep rambling like this, it probably will be. So so interesting. The ESG thing from Tesla is kind of the first thing they talk about in their impact report. And if you want to read the impact report for yourself, it's 144 pages. It's dense. I mean, they do as good of a job as you can of making it interesting, but at a certain point, your eyes just kind of glaze over. But there are some cool things. I put a link in the description. Let me just make sure it's in there. Yeah, so if you want to download that, follow along, or read it later, or send it to friends, that link is down there. Yeah, we'll get into that and then talk a little more road trip stuff. I just got back from a road trip Monday night, and that video is going to be coming out on Sunday as I am just coming back from the next road trip. So it's been a lot in the air, up in the air. So let's talk about the impact report and then get into that stuff. I need to switch over to the other cameras and make the huge trek across my palatial office as we saw last week. Let's see if I can do this a little more organized this week. And there we are. Well, hi there, friends. And this week I will try to remember to mute you when I move the microphone. So hopefully that wasn't too bad. So I'm going to bring up the impact report. We aren't going to read through the whole thing because it's, like I said, 144 pages. And some of it's a little boilerplate-ish. And I do want to say before we get too far into this that although, everything in here is obviously, we're doing the best we can. We're doing everything right. Or, we've got great lofty goals. But all of this stuff does come from them. So take everything with a grain of salt. I have pretty good trust in what they're trying to do. But, obviously they're not going to skew things to make themselves look bad. They're not going to go out of their way to publish something that's, really makes them look bad. So, another interesting thing I wanted to mention, probably should have over there, but with Elon's excessive tweeting recently, there tends to be, he's got such an outsized impact on what people perceive Tesla to be. And there are a ton of people, I think over like 100,000 or about 100,000 Tesla employees, who are all working on the mission, who are all trying to make it the best company they can be and, deliver the products and everything in a responsible way. I do think most of the people who are hired there and work there are doing so for the right reasons. And on Twitter and other places, it can feel like Elon is Tesla. And obviously he's a key part of it and everything, but there are all of these other people. And something that I don't think people get about maybe him or the company is that he is hardly mentioned in this at all. He's mentioned a little bit in a section about employee compensation and management compensation because obviously he needs to be. But there are no pictures of him looking cool, meeting with, famous people or meeting with, world leaders or whatever. It's the impact report is very not Elon focused, and I think that's the way he wants it to be. It's about the company. It's about all the other people, the employees. but I don't think that perception really gets out into the world. So that was an interesting thing, especially like I said, with when Elon's been so active on Twitter, and it kind of he kind of sucks the air out of the room of talking about what the company is doing and overall EV stuff kind of gets lost in this mix of whatever's on his mind at any given moment. But some of that, like I said, will come into play. So the first page, they talk about this ESG thing, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if part of the reason they dumped Tesla out is because they break this down pretty thoroughly, saying that, like if this is a good section here where an obvious example of this measuring of the impact of automotive industry, one might think that the more electric vehicles an automaker sells as a percentage of total volumes, the better its ESG score. However, that's not the case. As long as a company continues to slightly decrease the emissions of its manufacturing operations while churning out gas guzzlers, its ESG ratings are likely to go up. And they talk a little bit about this and how it's kind of a measure of value or share security rather than what they're actually doing to the planet. And just lowering, saying we have a plan to lower emissions in our factories will get a terrible company a great rating because, oh, look, they're doing some slight thing, where Tesla is making, electric vehicles, battery storage, solar products, grid scale battery storage. Really the biggest electric vehicle charging network out there, and that apparently just doesn't count. So kind of crazy. Interesting that they put this right here at the beginning of their impact statement, and it kind of is a theme throughout this that and Elon's talked about this too, that there's the perception of doing what's right, and then there's doing what's right. And, this scoring is kind of an example of this is what we're measuring right now, and you can get a good score without actually doing the things that this score is supposed to represent. So, over here, we can see many ESG ratings evaluate, does this ESG issue impact the profitability of the company? And we need a system that evaluates, does the growth of this company have a positive impact in the world? And I think that's a much better target to be going for, whether or not you meet these particular requirements. But anyway, that's interesting, and especially in light of today's announcement. So another reason to look through this is good fodder for when you're having those discussions of people who say, it's, EVs aren't as green as you say. They're, there's problems with mining. There's whole sections on here about mining and stuff, and we'll glaze over that because it's a lot. But in 2021, the global fleet of Tesla vehicles, energy storage, and solar panels enabled our customers to avoid emitting 8.4 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So that's great. One thing that kind of strikes me as something worth talking about is when all these credits are talked about, when all this emissions are added up, it seems like a lot of entities want to use that credit, and we have a tendency. Here we have Tesla saying, hey, we've avoided emitting all this CO2 equivalent, and that's fantastic. But then you might have the company, or like a Hertz, or whoever, or another, somebody doing Turo or something, them saying, well, look, we're saving this much greenhouse gas. And then you have, maybe the people using their service saying, we're using that service, so look, we're saving. And I kind of get concerned that we're double and maybe triple counting the benefits. Obviously, if each step of that process was done instead of an EV, it was done in a gas vehicle, you would have the emissions. But I think there is some room to talk as we start transitioning to more EVs, as more companies start talking about their strategy, kind of like we were talking on the last page, like if everybody's counting these credits down the line, how much was really saved, or is it just one of those spread between three companies or three entities or whatever? So thinking about that, it's something I talked about when talking about the Well Done Foundation too. If everybody's if everybody's claiming the credit for the savings, it isn't that the savings isn't good, but does the perception outweigh the actual good being done? And do we need to do 3 times as much good to actually level out that what each entity along the way is claiming? That, I hope that made some sense. It's all clear in my mind, but you never know when you're trying to express a vague thought like that, if it's going to come across. But anyway, all good. 8.4 metric tons of CO2 in 1 year. So good news. And then they go into talk about the lifetime fuel consumption and use phase, greenhouse gas emissions. This is one of those good FUD charts, or not chart, but graphics. Lifetime fuel consumption of a gas vehicle. That's 70 tons of CO2 equivalent released in the atmosphere. And it's hard to decarbonize because they're saying carbon capture is not economically viable today. And I think that means on the small scale, well, really, it's probably not economically viable on the large scale yet either, but definitely on the car scale, it's not economically viable today. And then over the lifetime of a EV, it would only be 30 tons of CO2 released, assuming current global grid mix, which of course will improve over time. Hey, Brandon. Welcome. And John, yeah, that's a possibility. About them canceling orders, or not canceling, stop accepting new orders. Todd, thank you. Good to know it's clear as mud. Okay, so here's kind of like what I was talking about. Todd says it's clear as mud. More energy generation than consumption. So Tesla solar panels, and this includes Solar City before Tesla acquired them. They've generated more electricity than been consumed by our vehicles and factories between 2012 and 2021. So that's fantastic. But it's also, again, another place we're counting this. And it's not in addition to those other savings. It's just another way to look at it. But that's great. Hopefully they can stay outpacing that. I don't know if that's going to be the case with kind of the slower rollout of solar and Tesla energy. But the energy they've used at the factories and other facilities, and then the energy to charge all cars. So that's pretty cool. Gotta make sure I'm on the right screen. So Tesla's purpose is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, strive to be the best on every metric relevant to our mission. They kind of restate here the goal in 2030 is to be about 20 million vehicles, and deploy about 1,500 gigawatt hours of energy storage per year by that time. So big growth is what they're planning. And then they want to improve it as they manufacture it, in each step of the life cycle, and how they manufacture it. So good, big, bold goals there. That I like those targets. Here they talk about the potential to make an impact, kind of different things that the global greenhouse gas emissions by sector, and then the U.S. Transportation is a big one on both of these, and then electricity production, heat production are also very, very big. So tackling those and improving their metrics on industry might not move this needle so much unless they can prove, like with the gigacastings, that it's an improvement that other people might be moving to. Hopefully they could inspire some change in this metric, but obviously going after the big blue items here. Then they're talking about the ecosystem, from the sun to the vehicle, managing energy storage, batteries, and then maximizing utilization through FSD. They talk a lot about Robo Taxis and things. This section we're going to go over pretty quickly because it's corporate governance, and they talk about the management structure. This is where they talk a little bit about Elon's compensation package and things. Tesla aspires to be a do the right thing company, code of business ethics and principles. A lot of the I saw one article today that was talking about part of the reason that they were dropped out of the ESG fund was the lack of, I guess there have been a couple lawsuits and things as far as claims of racism and stuff, and obviously that that shouldn't happen. But when you have a lot of employees and a lot of diversity, not that obviously you should have diversity, so I'm not saying that, but when you have people from different walks of life working together, there's going to be frictions, and any large company is going to have problems. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it okay, it's not excusing it, but just interesting that was quoted as one of the reasons to drop Tesla out was because they've had some lawsuits and employees that were discriminated against. Now, is that a top-down corporate problem? Judging by the rest of this section and employee section, it certainly doesn't seem to be their messaging. but you never know what's happening on with middle managers and people down the chain. So obviously, harassment and racism-free workplace is the ideal goal. I don't know that there is such a thing in the real world, but obviously that should be the goal. And at least in these statements, it's all pretty clear that that's what they're striving for. Um, so, uh, committees on the board. This is, if you're into this stuff, it might be interesting. Compensation philosophy. This is, like I said, I think the only time Elon's mentioned, just because they have to talk about their pay, how they're paying the CEO. But it is all achievement based, and if he doesn't create value for other shareholders, then he's not, making money either. Um, um, yeah, um, corporate governance. They talk here about how they handle data privacy, um, human rights, and they really go into detail. Obviously, they have their full human rights policy here, but addressing human rights risks is an ongoing effort involving engagement with our value chain for potential impacts. So they're talking about not just them, their employees, their hiring strategies. Um, uh, we endorse and base our definition of human rights on dignity, respect, equality without discrimination for all people, and are committed to upholding these rights and values throughout our value chain. So that means employees and customers, shareholders, suppliers, and communities in which they operate. And we require that our suppliers will also support and promote these values in their own operations and in those of their own suppliers. So, you can take things how you want, but at least they're saying all the right things as far as concerns about those things in the workplace. And then they talk, that's a big thing with, this is a big thing with a big FUD thing is, it's children mining, it's slave labor, and not that hasn't ever happened or isn't maybe still happening in some places, but there's a lot of talk in here about the commitment to stamping that out, making sure they've got a responsible materials policy, supplier code of conduct. So it seems like again they're doing everything they can without having an extra employee watching every mine at every moment, and hopefully that kind of stuff is going away in the world. I'd like to think that's the case, but sometimes it's easy to be cynical. But like I said, as far as what they're working on, different groups they're a part of, trying to mitigate that stuff is as best they can. It seems like they're doing what they can. Brendan, have a good night. Thanks. Thanks for stopping by. So people and culture, they hire a lot. They pay well. I don't know if that's necessarily goes all the way down through the stores, but there is other upside potential here. They talk about grants and stocks or options. If the company does well, every employee can benefit materially from Tesla's success. I haven't talked to employees about this, but good benefits, medical, dental, vision with no paycheck deductions, 401k matching, life insurance, and parental leave, and all that stuff. So it seems like they're, ahead of where companies I've worked for in the past have been. So um, seems like they're doing well there, and people want to work there. Like I said, they're nearly at 100,000. Yeah, 100,000 direct jobs, and they said somewhere that they had like 3 million. Oh, uh, yeah, 3,500,000 global applicants per year. Um, oh, I guess it's 3 million. The chart goes up higher than that. Anyway, so people want to work there. Benefits seem good. Top choice for engineering grads. Um, and it seems like they've got a lot of apprenticeships and development programs in the communities they're in for no university degree required. Right out of high school, they'll take people, they'll train them, get them whatever classes they need at community colleges or whatever to get them right in the workplace. So that all seems pretty positive to me. Down through K through 12, supporting K through 12 education, um, and then different Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day, National Manufacturing Day, different things, programs for different groups. So then they talk about the stock-based compensation and how that can add up for employees over time, assuming the stock is going up, which isn't the case in the last few days, but it can be good over time. Pay equity, they talk about how they try to deal with unconscious biases and things like that, and continue to try to get better at that. So that all seems, from a employer standpoint, the kinds of things that they should be talking about. They want their benefits to exceed the standards in the manufacturing industry. And then other benefits and things, paternal and family leave benefits, and employee satisfaction is growing. I would guess as they've stopped doing those quarter end pushes of killing everyone every 3 months, I would imagine that your employee satisfaction would go up. So hopefully that continues. And talk about how they do a lot of promotion from within. Diversity, equity, and inclusion principles. And then they talk about their demographics here. And veterans, LGBTQ+. A lot of different groups and I'm trying to think of a good word, like sub clubs within Tesla that you can join and be a part of, and feel like you have a voice in what Tesla does, and different gatherings and places you feel welcome. So that's cool. Respectful workplace. Obviously, you can't control what every employee does, but again, doing the best you can from a management and culture standpoint. You try to set up a culture that is. You try to set up a culture that is going to have people respecting each other and doing the right thing. So hopefully that is, if it's not happening enough now, hopefully it's progressing toward that. This is pretty cool if you're into supporting Ukraine. They've talked about disaster relief in different places, but part of it is supporting Ukraine. March 22, Tesla employees in Europe volunteered to design, prototype, and deploy the first 50 kits containing power walls, gateways, solar inverters to support continued energy access in Ukraine. When paired with one of the 250 solar panels dispatched by volunteers at Giga Berlin, these mini power plants can assist Ukrainian communications and essential services indefinitely by using solar to recharge the power wall. Following the Starlink terminals used for satellite internet access made by SpaceX, the kits were shipped to Ukrainian border in Poland, at which point they were transferred onto military trucks. The kit can begin providing power almost instantly without any tools or technical experience required. With the Powerwall kit alone, a user can power Starlink for 5 days. With solar panels installed and operational, the kits can provide indefinite power for Starlink terminal, plus a small appliance or laptop. So, really cool that, that's the kind of stuff that doesn't make headlines. And when Elon's on Twitter trolling, that, kind of detracts from this amazing work by dedicated people on his team. So, I think that's pretty sweet. Then they talk about other situations where they've deployed solar or other things to Powerwall units to help people in after disasters. A lot of talk about safety, and they highlight this gal who's put in take charge submissions. She's put in over 1,800 improvement suggestions to safety process, cost savings, and more since the program started in early 2021. So that's a lot fast. And John, I don't think the president has recognized Starlink, but I think some of the military leaders have talked about what a game changer it is. But basically, that kind of like Elon's mantra on engineering, as far as whoever's got the best idea will take it, whether that person's got a degree, whether they're mopping the floor, or it's one of the executives. This seems to be their take at with safety as well. So that's good to see. And protecting people, COVID-19, and then recordable injuries compared to cars produced is going down. The number of cars is going up. So that's good. Here they talk again about these metrics as they're reporting them from OSHA aren't a real clear picture. So they're going to, for impact reports going forward, they're going to do a different system of the American Society for Testing and Materials standard, because they feel it better represents their global reach and more clearly illuminates serious injuries and illnesses, allowing the focus to remain on preventing and mitigating outcomes of our highest risk activities. So again, like we talked about at the beginning, trying to give the clearest picture, and obviously they'll still report OSHA stuff to OSHA, but for impact reports, giving a clearer picture of what's going on with the factories. Or at least that's their take on it. Fremont factory, Fremont days away restricted or transferred rate has remained below the North American industry classification average. And it's just below the average in 2021. But, staying below the average is good when it comes to injuries. the global serious injury rate is lower than average. Hopefully they can keep that below average and even go lower. Obviously, no injury is good. And then they talk about how they're working with contractors and people and their injury rates and how they're going to try to improve that. Environmental impact, the thing everybody wants to know about. So we kind of saw this before. The energy produced by solar, consumed. Then they're talking about the life cycle analysis for Model 3 and Y. And different, variables that are often overlooked. The big one here that I think of all the time when people talk about, are EVs better is when you talk about a gas car, it's not just it filling up. It's the emissions generated through the oil refining and the transportation process. The energy and emissions that it takes to get it out of the ground, get it piped or transported to a refinery, the energy to refine it, get it onto trucks or tanker trains or whatever, and then get that to your local gas station. And then it gets into your car and is burned and wasted. So that's a whole extra chain. And you can say, yeah, but my car's only, 10-gallon tank. But it's like that's 10 gallons every time you fill up. Eventually, one of those trucks is your responsibility. So that's one I always think about. And people often assume that an average EV needs a battery replacement, and it doesn't. We've not seen that. Well, we'll see in 10 years what the rates are, but I'm feeling pretty good about most manufacturers' abilities to make batteries. Let's see. So here again, the carbon impact of ICE vehicles remains the same every year of use and actually gets worse because they get less efficient over time. And an EVs will remain the same every year, but it will also get better as the average vehicle lifetime or the U.S. electric grid generation mix will continue to get more green over time. And I think it's actually going to accelerate higher than they're anticipating here, but I think they're being conservative. So here they've got a couple charts, and this is the big thing I think as far as showing the manufacturing phase and then the use phase of each vehicle, and really the ones to really pay attention to are, someone who has solar. Until we get into big ride share numbers, I think throwing those in there is a little bit of a red herring. I know they want to go there, but until it's on the road, I think it's a little disingenuous to add them. Unless people are using their 3s and Ys for Lyft, Uber, or taxis. I guess in those cases they make sense, but basically, this is the emissions from a Model 3 or Y for personal use that's solar charged. And here they add in the emissions to make the solar part too. That's why this dark blue is a little higher than this. This is personal use grid charged compared to a premium ICE vehicle in the US. And then as we shift to a greener grid, this is going to stay the same, but this will get better, and this won't change at all. So kind of illustrating what they were talking about on the last part, on the last page. This is the UK and Europe, and you can see here this is a little higher here, but the use phase is lower. But again, we're seeing the same trends of higher to manufacture and then way better through its life. Even in China, this is not good compared to the American chart, to the US chart, but it's much better than a premium ICE vehicle, and if they can improve their grid over time, this can come down significantly. So that's what we want to see, is cleaner grids making these numbers continue to dive down, and that's just not going to happen with an ICE vehicle. Here they're talking about Robo Taxi stuff. Again, I'm hopeful on that, but I'm not going to go crazy about it until we actually see it. Hey, cool, I got a dislike on the chat. Any engagement is good, so I prefer likes, but whatever. Here they're talking about, in some of the latest presentations, they've talked quite a bit about building factories from scratch with the whole game plan of, instead of the hodgepodge of buildings and how they had to do things in Fremont, to designing their own factories where things go from stamping to welding to paint shop to general assembly and then out the door. And for some reason in this, they put an H in welding. I don't know if that's a European thing, a UK thing, but I've never seen welding with an H. Going to cover factories and solar. Again, this has been the plan for years and years. We'll see when it actually happens. It seems like it's starting to roll out more and more now, but no reason all those flat roofs can't be covered in solar and making a lot of their energy. Here they start talking about using more renewable energy in their factories, but also by using the dry electrode technology, they're removing wastewater, water usage, water contamination through the manufacturing process. And this is going to be a bigger theme. They talk about, the batteries are at 200,000 miles, should still have pretty good capacity for the entire life of the vehicle. Let's see, this is kind of the greenhouse gases, bring it down by selling more EVs, having the grid be cleaner, all of those things. And use product emissions. They talk about how they have better data on all this stuff because all their vehicles are connected, and when they charge, they can tell where, how, and how much energy is being used, what the grid is in each area, all that kind of stuff, or if it's charging off solar or whatever. So they also want to work on supply chain emissions, and so their suppliers, giving them emissions data and energy usage data that they can help them work on. So that's kind of, again, looking forward, plans they can have to help the whole life cycle. ICE is most efficient and cleanest at the beginning of its life. EVs will get cleaner over their lifetime as the grid becomes greener. And then look for ways to reduce emissions beyond vehicles through solar and storage products. Basically, hey, buy more stuff from us and you'll be greener. Then they talk about other pollutants, and it's not just the pollution of burning fossil fuels to produce energy or just in general for global warming, but they also talk about the pollution and the local pollution in cities, how that can lead to premature deaths and things like that. And then we start talking about this Tesla Semi and the opportunity they have with that, that the U.S. fleet is basically semis are 1.1 of the 1% of the U.S. vehicle fleet, but 17.9 of emissions. So they have an opportunity to make a huge difference if and when they can get the semi out into the public. So hopefully they can do that. Hopefully we see them really making strides on that in the next year. I'm excited for it, but I'm getting a little tired of waiting for some of that stuff. Especially because there is that outsized impact in what it could be from an emission standpoint. They talk about wastewater here, waste per vehicle, as far as excess packaging, making sure the new factories have loading docks. Here you can kind of see loading docks all around the factory, so parts and pieces can go right to where they need to be. Fewer steps, and new manufacturing sites are doing a lot of recycling, a lot of waste mitigation. So here they talk about water and usage and power generation, and a lot of plans around using different types of water, everything from condensation to non-potable water, for cool power producing equipment. There's just a lot of ways they're trying to conserve water, and you can see obviously that was a huge factor in Berlin, and so that's going to be something to watch for. I know all eyes in Germany are on how much water is that gigafactory going to use. But if they can come up with good systems, that's going to be, something they should be able to transfer to the other factories. So optimization of the processes that need water, using rainwater and condensation from the air conditioning, all that kind of stuff, and reclaimed and recycled water, different ways they can use that. So cool. That's one of those things, especially, Giga Texas is right on the river. Not adding crap into that river is important. There's a lot of talk. We've just talked about Giga Berlin and the water usage being a problem or a concern there. So hopefully, that's something they can do. Then they talked about emissions credits. This is kind of a funny page because they're saying, hey, we sold all these emissions credits and we used it to make factories, to make EVs faster, which in turn displaces ICE vehicles. So the credit system was made so all these other groups would switch to EVs faster. You can see to varying degrees how interested in that they've been. Meantime, some of these people have been paying Tesla to build more and more EVs. So taking money away from ICE vehicle production and turning it into EVs. But also in here, so it's kind of a dig at those other companies, and then down here it's a, hey, we really need everybody else to, like, you can stop paying us now, just make your EVs. And we hope that every car manufacturer will strive to produce hundreds of thousands of EVs per year, as significant reduction of emissions will only be achieved if all car makers push for an industry-wide shift to EVs. Hey, Tim, welcome. So product impact. They talk about price here. I get if you compare it to other luxury things, I think all of us would agree, like, we still wish the pricing from a couple of years ago was in place for the Model 3 and the Y. So, this is one of those things that I think they're looking a little rose-colored glasses on the pricing. But Model 3 rear-wheel drive is, to me, would still be a very expensive vehicle. But I do guess I get what they're saying. Hopefully prices can come down in the next couple of years with more production. Total cost of ownership, again, if you can't afford the car in the first place, that's not going to matter a whole lot to you. But it is interesting, worth reading if you're into that. This page hit home for me because customers are using their Tesla as their main car. Why, yes I am. And I think I'm almost at 33,000 miles in a year and a couple months. So, yeah, the average Model Y driven in the U.S. is, I wish mine only had this many miles on it, about 15,000. But definitely people are using these as their primary vehicles. Supercharging, everybody loves it. Longer the range, the lower the supercharger use. Yeah, of course, that makes sense. Most of our charges are about 20 to 25 minutes, so that's and then here they have their uptime of supercharger sites, and it is uptime of supercharger sites reflects the average percentage of sites globally that had at least 50% daily capacity functional for the year. So it's not every stall is working perfectly all the time, but I know in a couple places in North Dakota they were having problems with, like, a bank of 8 superchargers. 4 of them would go down for an afternoon or something. So that's not ideal, but you can still get people through, and it's better than having one site one stall that doesn't work. So I've had very good luck in general. Had a couple weird connection issues on Monday in Minneapolis, but just moved to a different stall and it worked fine. Safety. There's a lot in here about safety score. That can be debated. I know some people don't like that. Crash avoidance, some different things here. Again, I don't want to go through every single page on here, but basically the Model 3 is just, super safe. Y is super safe. All the Teslas are safe, and all of this stuff is, I don't know if they say it here somewhere else, but basically they say that all the safety features are on all the cars regardless of price or trim, and safety is not an option. It's just built into the vehicles. And then we've seen some of this stuff before. Number of vehicular accidents per million miles driven in 2001. Teslas with autopilot engaged. I would guess at this point that includes FSD data too. Then I would guess it'd have to, because the knock on that stat has always been, well, yeah, but you're using autopilot on the highway. Most accidents happen, city streets, parking lots, and things like that. But so good stat, it's worth keeping an eye on. And then this is a kind of a cool real-world Tesla crash data of kind of the heat map of where accidents are coming from, and then where they're regulated to do testing from, and then collisions recorded by the fleet show a relatively similar heat map, but definitely those sides and the rear end impacts are showing up there significantly. So wait a minute. Yeah, okay. Sorry. My brain just froze for a second. That'll happen. And then they've got, in here the video on driver safety data where they kind of explain that chart. I think is explained a little better in that video. And then they talk about data analysis, airbag deployment, lots of safety, lots of over-the-air updates, vehicle safety awards, all that stuff. Then they talk about fires, and they want to continue to improve safety over time. Number of fire events per billion miles traveled in 2012 through 2021. Over 50 is the U.S. average. I think this is like 6 or something like that for 5 or 6 for Tesla. So not a fire risk, despite the perceptions out there in the articles. Commercial scale customers, Megapack and renewables. This is cool, but I do not understand this chart. I stared at it for a while and thought I'm going to need more time. But if you're interested in this, check it out. Like I said, link is in the description. Solar and storage, deployment's growing. Obviously, we all wish it'd go faster. Lots of electrical disturbances in the U.S. And so, having your own personal grid is nice if you can afford that kind of thing. Here's where they get into the supply chain, where, if they can dig it, refine it, put it in a battery pack, then they can continue to make battery packs out of it. So that's the direction they want to go. But there is still mining and things that need to be done. So there's going to be some raw material mining, and then you use that, you add in, significantly less raw material the second time, less raw material the third time. Hopefully that trend can continue. Longer battery longevity is the most sustainable option. I'm not sure if it's on this page, but something they were talking about here is if a battery pack is damaged or something, rather than just recycling it, they try to find another way to use it. And I don't know if that's, okay, let's take this pack, take the usable modules out and get that into battery storage, or kind of how they do that, but they were talking about like recycling is kind of the last resort. We want to use it, use it, use it, use it, then recycle it, make new batteries, use it, use it, use it, use it. Um, and here again, they talk about, the materials in a lithium ion battery are recyclable. When petroleum is pumped out of the ground, chemically refined, and then burned, it releases toxic emissions into the atmosphere that are not recoverable for reuse. Battery materials, in contrast, are refined and put into a cell and will remain in that cell to the end of the life, where they can be recycled to recover valuable materials for reuse repeatedly. So they talk about how they extend the life through how they manufacture it, over-the-air software updates to, kind of maximize the longevity of the batteries and so on. So, and any battery that's no longer meeting customers' needs can be serviced at a Tesla service center. I'd be interested to know how that process works, but they're made to last many years. Therefore, they've received a limited number of them back from the field. Most batteries that Tesla recycles today are pre-consumer, coming to us through R&D and quality control. None of our scrapped lithium-ion batteries go into landfills and are 100% recycled. Tesla has an established internal ecosystem of remanufactured batteries coming from the field to our service centers. So we actively implement circular economy principles and consider all other options before opting for batteries recycling. So I find that really interesting that, like I would think, you get a pack back from a scrapped vehicle, that's the first thing you do is just recycle the thing. But it sounds like they have other strategies to find uses for that. So interesting. And they're talking about, they don't have a ton of batteries back because our oldest vehicles in the oldest Model S vehicles are about 9 years old. And so before they start getting volumes back, it's going to be a while. Here they talk through working with third-party recyclers, also recycling in-house. And every Tesla battery factory will recycle batteries on site. So here's your 1,000 kilowatt hours worth of end-of-life batteries. By the time you do all the recycling things, you get 921 kilowatt hours worth of raw materials for new battery production. So that is pretty good. And then they talk again about suppliers. And the direct sourcing from upstream companies, due diligence management, collaboration. Again, just really hammering home that they're trying to do the right thing from their perspective, but also make sure they're getting the best out of their suppliers and the most ethical production out of their suppliers as well. And here they talk about some more of that stuff in detail. The environmental and local communities, the impact of mining activity on the environment there lends itself to greater environmental and social scrutiny from civil society policymakers and investors. So, just kind of talking more through that. They do that through, more direct sourcing of about 95% of lithium hydroxide, 50% of cobalt, and 30% of nickel is sourced directly. So you can have a little more control when you're the one dealing with the mining, directors. So, probably room for improvement, more oversight, but clearly it's a big focus. It's about the third or fourth time they've mentioned it throughout the report. Then they talk about their diversified cathode, nickel, cobalt, aluminum, and nickel, manganese, cobalt cathode for the higher performance vehicles, semi, roadster, Cybertruck, and then lithium iron phosphate for the shorter range and grid storage kind of thing uses. And then they talk about their audits to make sure their refiners and miners are doing the things that they say they're doing. Supply chain mapping, and greenhouse gas emission hotspot identification. So finding the different places along the supply chain where the most greenhouse gases are being produced, and then looking at that supply chain and saying, how can we get that down? And so, you add all this together, you get the total, the total content. But if you can bring, nickel production significantly down, if you can bring graphite production significantly down, you can bring your entire total down over time. So it's good that they're looking at this holistically. I need some water. And so they're talking about the supply chain data collection for greenhouse gases, trying to improve that and get a better, clear picture, so this report can be as accurate as possible. Visiting to facilities, priority areas, fair working conditions, protecting water levels and water quality, and coexistence between industrial and artisanal mining operations, and kind of the actions taken by Tesla. So I'm imagining this is an ongoing process. So people are quick to say, well, Tesla doesn't want to talk about this or that. Some downsides of mining, or they clearly are taking great pains to talk about it. So this is a good resource to share with people who spread FUD, and you can send it to them, and rest assured they'll never read it. But it's there. Let's see. Risk mitigation, all that kind of stuff. So again, joining groups that are in organizations that are trying to, get things done ethically and responsibly, and then kind of their outlook. So Tesla's battery responsible sourcing program is still relatively new, yet the program has achieved several important milestones this last year, including the development and initial implementation of a system to identify global environmental and social risk in battery supply chain, and concrete progress towards mitigation and improving the situation of stakeholders impacted by Tesla's battery supply chain. So sounds like there's work to do, but they are working on it. And first you gotta take the steps you can take until you solve every problem. But good that they're working on it. Their audit program, expanding their audit program, risks in the supply chain, different things they found, and things they need to work on, improve, and all that stuff. That's a lot to read. So after that, it's graphs and charts and summaries and everything. So luckily we don't have to go through the rest of that. But I did want to. Oh, that went really big. I don't know why that happened. Um, go to the. Let's go back to the top. So, like I said in the beginning, that this was produced by Tesla. They're not going to make themselves out to look terrible, but in reading through this, even just looking through it quickly, um, with me here, you can see, it seems like they're trying to do the right things, what you would expect any company to say that they're doing, through the different sections. So, and even going further in some places than I think other companies would. So, I think with some of that, the supply chain auditing, um, some of the safety stuff, you can tell areas where they are going above what it appears other companies are doing because they've been making EVs for long enough and at such scale that they've had questions posed to them that maybe other companies haven't. Um, Questions about where are you getting this or that, or it seems like a lot of the traditional OEMs that are making EVs. Hey, Roland. Um, the traditional companies making EVs, they're kind of in that stage of everybody's patting them on the back because, hey, you're making an EV, and they aren't asking some of the harder questions. Where Tesla's been doing it, been getting all these comments, and so not only do they have some answers to these hard questions, but they're looking at ways in improving those situations. So I like to see this report. It is dry, so I apologize for kind of going through this, but I do think even if you don't want to hear me talk about it, knowing where to find it with the link in the description and being able to share it with people who might need to hear some of this stuff is pretty positive. Like I said, the company, what they're doing, and what they stand for is different than the perception of the company as Elon, and whatever it says what Elon's doing on Twitter is the flavor of the day. Therefore, all of Tesla is Elon's thought on the toilet today. And that's clearly not the case. There are competent people trying to, really put do a good thing for the world. So that's about it on the impact report. Sorry if that was too long on there, but I found it kind of interesting, so I wanted to share it. I am going to switch us back to camera one. Hi. And talk a little bit about road trips because several of us are about to go on the road tomorrow to Sound of Silence in Custer, South Dakota. Let me see if I have that. If I can get this up on that screen. Watch Brian fumble with his computer. That's the best show in town. And we'll go back here. Hey there. So again, we looked at this last week or 2 weeks ago of the Better Route Planner route out to Custer, South Dakota for the Sound of Silence rally. That starts, I think technically people arrive and check in on Friday, but I think a lot of us are going tomorrow and just be there for the long weekend. So looking forward to that. Like I said, I'm going to be leaving the second I put my daughter on that bus. I'm going to be sprinting to the car and hitting the road. Coming down through St. Peter, Mankato, and down to Worthington, and hopefully I'll meet everyone on time. So Roland's coming from way up here and down, so he's got quite a drive too. And just getting back into the chat. I'm gonna go over to the other. I'm gonna go to camera 2 here, because I don't need the computer anymore. Hopefully I'm still audible. Let's see. I missed John's comment earlier. I'm glad I bought my Model Y in 2020. The prices went up $10,000. Yeah, me too. Oh, good. We came in focus. Jim is checking in from Japan. Hey, Jim. I hope your trip over went well. Good flight and everything. How long are you there? That's a good long business trip. But nice to see you. And thanks for checking in. I'm trying to think of what time of. It must be early tomorrow in Japan, I think, if I understand the globe, which I might not. John says, us people on the beta program, when are we going to get the next update? I would guess in the next week or so. It sounds like it started rolling out to employees, and it's a big update, so I'm guessing they're going to find some flaws in it. There's going to need to be some fixes, and then, hopefully it starts rolling out to us in the next couple weeks. I've had some really good beta drives. Not everywhere, but I've been in some hairy situations lately. A tight, tough intersection near my house, and then a guy was leaning. He was leaning into his car with kind of the 1 foot hanging out, the door propped open, and that was on the right side of the road. Left side of the road, oncoming traffic was passing me, and beta slowed down just the perfect amount, kind of got over to the left a little bit, but not so much to freak this person out, and just almost identical to what I would have done. In a just completely random situation that I've never been in using beta, and it handled it perfectly. Then turning onto my street, it did a really big jerky move. I was like, "Oh, you were so good!" So, we'll see what 12 will bring, but hoping next week we'll be able to see that. Tim asks, did I factor in the 25 to 30 mile an hour headwind? I did not. I haven't looked at the wind. I've looked at some of the temperatures, but we'll just have to take it as we go. I guess if we don't have headwind, we can just drive faster, right? And no one will keep up with Jason. Soul food cooking. Thanks. I hope we all have a safe trip too. I was doing bedtime tonight and I'm going to put on a whole lot of miles without you guys in the car, and that's going to be weird. And because my wife and daughter are not coming this time, so. Jim says, all good in Japan, left on Sunday, coming home on Saturday. Almost 1 p.m. Thursday here. Okay. I was like, yeah, is it past afternoon, or like, is it like, it's probably beyond morning. But anyway, I hope you had a delicious lunch in Japan. Uh, I gotta imagine those flights are pretty tough, getting used to the time changes. But have a good trip, have a safe flight, and all that, and a good experience while you're there. Yeah, so this weekend, obviously, we're going to Sound of Silence tomorrow, and Sunday, the video from my last weekend was a road trip up north to Grand Marais, Minnesota, which is about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes from the Canadian border as you're driving up Lake Superior. Just a beautiful, beautiful weekend to be up there. A little windy at one point, but for the most part, pretty tame and warm for this time of year. So, very happy with that. We went up on Saturday morning, back on Monday. By the time I had some other errands after the trip was over, by the time I got home, it was 7:30 Monday night, and then yesterday was a quick edit of that weekend video that that'll come out this Sunday. Will be kind of our North Shore Tesla road trip, which was good at a lot of different charging situations. Some good scenery, I think, and some fun photos and different stuff. So I hope you enjoy that. We talk kind of through charging strategy of, it used to be always be charging, ABC, and just, if you stop, you plug in somewhere to get some juice and never waste a minute of downtime. And that, at least, in the Tesla world where there are superchargers, that's kind of gone away. You just stop where you need to. So longer ranges and better infrastructure has kind of cured some of that. But along this trip, I did a lot of opportunity charging where it's like, we're here, we're going to need juice at some point, so we may as well get it here. So again, hopefully you find that interesting. That's going to be Sunday, I think 9:30 Central Time. That should drop. And then, the rivers up there are crazy with how high, and they'd come down significantly in the days from a couple days before we went up there. But we did some hikes along some rivers and things, and just the force of the water going out into the lake it's hard to fathom, like, if you got sucked into that, how badly you'd be tossed. It looked like there were sections that looked like cartoon whirlpools, like you'd see, or like Little Mermaid or something. Obviously, a slightly smaller scale, but just the churning of the water, and as the river's smashing into the lake, and then the lake's trying to kind of sweep over it, and the river's pushing under, and just the spinning and churning is incredible. So, had a tight hand on Joan the whole time, making sure she couldn't slip in, because we did not want to go for that ride. Let's see. John says, I heard there's a flight for 20 hours out there now, but it's first class on the whole plane. Wow. Yeah, that would... To do a single 20-hour flight, I think I'd have to do first class. John says, I hear that Maple Grove Target getting a supercharger, and that's right by your house. That's fantastic. You got home charging, a couple home chargers, so might not need to use it, but it's good to know. It's always kind of nice to have one close by, just a little security blanket, and tell people who are coming by of, oh yeah, it's right over there. Brian, you don't want to jump into that. That would be a yippee-ki-yay moment. Yeah. Yeah, it would be rough. So glad we avoided going in. My daughter and wife do like to dip their feet in the in the rivers, or in the, they didn't at the rivers, but they did at the harbor in Grand Marais, and water is cold, very very cold. We also went out and looked for moose, saw some deer, didn't see any moose. But I think that's going to be a fun. I think it's under a half hour, but it's the whole road trip start to finish with all the data from charging and everything will be in there. So looking forward to that one. That was a fun one to put together, and hope you enjoy that. Like I said, it's going to be dropping as we're coming back from South Dakota. I'm going to try to shoot a lot of video in South Dakota, maybe do some more interviews and things. I think Jason said he'd give me a ride in the Plaid while we were out there. So definitely we'll be recording that. So looking forward to a lot of fun. Getting the drone all... I had to replace a blade and everything. Got that squared away. So the only thing left now is to pack the car, get that stuff all set. And like I said, as soon as Joan's on the bus in the morning, I got to hit the road. So hopefully the wind won't be too bad. Tim's got me worried now, but with extra superchargers, the beauty of this, and as we were looking at the map earlier, I'm driving right by the St. Peter supercharger. If I feel like I need something or even a restroom break, I can go plug in there for 5 minutes. There's, between Worthington and Mitchell, there is Sioux Falls, where no one wants to go charge, but it's there if we need it. Between Mitchell, Murdo, Wall, Rapid City, Custer, there's enough chargers on the way if we need to hit every one of them. But I'm not too worried about it. Once I meet up with the group, I'm ready to just relax and enjoy the weekend. So looking forward to that. And if any of you guys are going to be there, if we haven't met in person, would love to meet and say hi. I'll be the nerd with the camera. So that's really all I've got for tonight. John says when I get a ride in a Plaid, make sure I hold the camera in front of my face so we see my reaction. Okay. Yeah, I've never done even like a ludicrous launch. So launching in my old 85D Model S and launching in my Model Y are about the fastest launches I've been in. So I think Plaid's a step up a little bit. So looking forward to that. Tim says should be good to go to Worthington. There are plenty of chargers, just no V3s, so we'll share power. Yeah. I was hoping I don't get to Worthington late and, when everybody else, and with a super low state of charge where I need to be there for forever. Because I think Worthington is a 125 kilowatt max charger too, so it's not even the fast V2s. But that's all right. We're on vacation. We're in road trip mode. We can just chill out. Or you guys all can go ahead and I'll catch up later. Whatever ends up working. But with that, I'm just kind of checking my notes. Anything else? Okay, I think we got it all. For those of you who are driving, drive safe and happy road tripping. I hope it's a good weekend. Bring warm clothes. I think it's going to be pretty cold Friday and Saturday out there. So with that, I will say good night. Thanks for joining me. And We will see you on the road. Thanks a lot. Have a good night. Bye.